Hey everyone, my name is Matt Gear, and I'm a systems engineer for Cisco Meraki. This is the second part of our two-part video in deploying a POC or POV for FreeRADIUS integrated into an Active Directory environment. So in this video, we're going to concentrate on the FreeRADIUS component. If you're interested in running Active Directory on a Linux server, definitely check out my first video that describes what we do there and how to get it built out using a script installer. For this video, we're going to do something very similar, and there's going to be a little bit of overlap, but not a lot. So in this video, what we're going to do is get that FreeRADIUS server built out. We're actually going to integrate it into our Meraki dashboard so you can see what that looks like. And we're going to do a little bit of basic testing to make sure everything is working the way we expect it to. And then we're going to show you, obviously, before that, how to get the script, take a look at this Word document real quick, and then we'll wrap it up. So let's go ahead and jump in. First, a little bit of housekeeping, right? The FreeRADIUS component out of the box comes designed to integrate into an Active Directory environment. So that can be either the Samba Active Directory that we talked about in the previous video, or it can be a Microsoft Active Directory environment. It really doesn't matter. For the FreeRADIUS is autonomous from an AD type, if you will. With that being said, then, from the FreeRADIUS to infrastructure perspective, the FreeRADIUS out of the box comes integrated for 802.1x, right? So that you can take your, maybe you have a WLC that you're doing some testing on. You can take that WLC and integrate it into this FreeRADIUS server. But we're going to be concentrating on Meraki today, right? It also supports the capabilities of MAC Auth and MAC Auth with iPSK. And it comes with some tools via server management that will allow you to modify and manage the system straight from the console. So in the Word document here, which is shared in the description of the video, you can parse through this document if you would like. This document was originally just that, a step-by-step guide to build out FreeRADIUS in an environment. But then, upon further thinking, it made sense to try to automate this as much as possible, right? So it give you some time back in your day and not having to spend, 2 or 3 hours reading documentation, getting files configured, troubleshooting those files, so on and so forth, right? So to actually build this out, then we have a couple prerequisites. Obviously, download this Word document, take a peek at it, see if it makes sense to you. But the other requirement, right, is to download Rocky Linux. And so you can do that by going to rockylinux.org. And there is a download button from there, which will then take you to this landing page where you can download the appropriate ISO. So what we would want is the minimal ISO, and we'll have the installer actually do the rest for us, right? So just like the Samba AD video, this installer keeps everything inside of the Rocky ecosystem. There's nothing that is third party, or we're not going out anywhere else to do anything from a binary perspective. The only thing that we're doing third party, right, is we're grabbing that script from GitHub to install it into our server and then get the install up and running, right? So if you're running ESXi, the Word document reflects that from a configuration perspective on how to install Rocky. If you're using KVM, which is what we're going to be doing today in this video, then, obviously you have some experience with KVM, you know how to build it out. From a Rocky install perspective, right, our requirements are to be able to, excuse me, have a root account enabled. We do want to enable root SSH access on the server, and we are requesting that you provide the FQDN and a static IP address in the GUI installer as you're installing Rocky. If you don't, that's fine. The script will catch that, and it will prompt you for that information before we continue, right? The other component is actually getting the script that we're going to use to do this install. So in the Word document, we have a section in here called Easy Installers. And the idea behind the easy install is that you download like 5 lines of code and you paste that code into your terminal, and the rest is taken care of for you, sans a couple questions that you have to answer. So in the Word document, you can go to the FreeRADIUS easy install section. You'll see a description of what the script actually does. And then if you come down here a little bit further, under the obtaining FreeRADIUS easy install, these are the lines of code that we would copy and paste into our terminal. If for some reason you don't have the Word document, you can also go straight to GitHub. And over here in the search or jump to, you can type in Meraki Mat, and you'll get a user result over here on the left-hand side. If you click on that and then click on Meraki Mat, you'll see that this takes you to a couple different repositories. And the one that we want to look at for FreeRADIUS is the FreeRADIUS script to build and integrate PEEP, MS-CHAP, and MAC Auth with iPSK support. So if you click into that repository, you'll see that there is an easy install file. And if you click on that easy install file, that's the exact same lines of code that we're going to use. So with that being said, let me go back over to my hypervisor here, and I'm going to log in real quick into my already deployed FreeRADIUS server. Again, just a minimal install. That's really all we did. And I'm going to log in. And the first thing I'm going to do is check my IP address. So in my environment, I have a DHCP server in this 24 subnet, right? So this is getting DHCP right now, and I'll be logging into that IP address. The one thing that I also wanted to bring up, right, is in this Word document, we have an embedded PDF that you can open up, and we're going to actually install based on this example network build out, right? So today, the FreeRADIUS server is going to be built out to allow our Meraki devices to talk to it on the 18 third octet here, right, and a 24 subnet. And the FreeRADIUS is going to be pointed to our Active Directory environment for DNS resolution because this FreeRADIUS server is going to be joined to the domain to be able to resolve Active Directory users and groups. So in order for us to do that, right, we want to emulate it, if you will, as close to a Windows client as possible to be able to get the name resolution, to be able to do things with winbind, to be able to do our user and group resolution. So that's our layout. So going back to our FreeRADIUS install here, we have that server sitting at 24.230. So I'm going to bring up a terminal, and I'm going to log in at that address. Okay, and again, depending on what document you have, if you're using the Word document or if you went to GitHub and got the code, all we're going to do here is we're just going to paste this in. And so the very first thing that it's going to do is it's going to get a couple resources to be able to grab the GitHub repository to download the files locally and start the install. Okay, and so this is a universal script. So if you looked at the Samba AD server deployment video, you'll know that we have a couple different options here for install. So we're going to be provisioning a FreeRADIUS server in this video. This installer, though, will allow you to install the Active Directory environment. It will allow you to add an additional AD Samba server to a pre-existing Active Directory environment, which you can then replicate multiple times if you wanted to or if you needed to for testing. And you have the option to provision the FreeRADIUS server. The one thing to take note, right, is that for each of these installers, you must be on a freshly installed Rocky deployment, right? So if I have my Active Directory server and I bring up this installer and I go to install FreeRADIUS, we don't want to do that, right? We want to build out a separate Rocky server and then install FreeRADIUS on that server. Okay, so from here, I'm going to go ahead and select my FreeRADIUS server install. And at this point, the first thing it's going to do is check for that static IP address, which we don't have, and we're going to go ahead and give it to it now. So based on that lab example, I believe that that's sitting at 24.11, and it is. So we're going to go ahead and use that IP address for this deployment. Okay, and so our Active Directory server in this deployment has a domain name called test.int, and the DNS server, which is the AD server, again, in this example environment, is sitting at 24.10. So we want to make sure that we're pointing, again, FreeRADIUS to the DNS server and anything DNS related, right? So our search domain, the FQDN of the FreeRADIUS server itself, that should all be the name that you're using in your Active Directory environment, because we're going to leverage that in the installer to be able to get this server joined to the domain. So I'm going to go ahead and press any key here, and it is going to reboot, and I'm just going to log back in at 24.11. And so once we reconnect here, you can see in the background that the server's rebooting. Once we reconnect here, the installer is going to automatically start up again. And that is going to allow us to actually deploy FreeRADIUS. So we're going to have a checklist that we're going to want to go through just to make sure that we have all of this user information. So as a portion of the FreeRADIUS deployment, we are going to do some testing to validate and make sure everything is working correctly. So we have to have a pre-existing user on the Active Directory side that we want to test with. So that's a portion of the checklist here. If you saw my first video for the Samba AD deployment, you'll know that we have some server management tools over there. And so I'm actually going to leverage those right now to create a user. And then I'm going to create a group that we're going to add that user to from a membership perspective, because those are the requirements on the 802.1x side as the FreeRADIUS server is built out, right? So, if you have users in that group, then obviously that's going to be a portion of the component for the FreeRADIUS server to authenticate that user and allow them access on the network. If they are not a portion of that group, then no access, right? So I'm going to go to user group management on my Active Directory server. I'm going to go ahead and add a new user. I'm going to call it Radius user. Okay. So I'm going to provide the first name of the user. I'm just going to call it Radius. Last name user, the initials, and the actual login is Radius user. And our password is going to be all lowercase, let me in. And so that user was successfully created. Now I'm going to create a group. I'm going to call it wireless users. Okay. And now I'm going to add my Radius user to the wireless users group. Okay, and so I've created that membership. Now, going back over to my FreeRADIUS server, I've taken care of 1 and 2, an active admin account, because we're going to join this to the domain, configured to use the DNS services for AD, realm, subnet, setter notation for our NAS devices to be able to talk to this server, right? And then the shared secret for those NAS devices. So what the server is going to do now is it's going to do a couple things, right? It's on the back end, it's going to detect if you're on an ESXi environment or if you're running KVM, and then it'll install the guest client, if you will, for that particular platform. It then goes and makes sure that SE Linux is enabled for the server. It will then go and create some holes in the firewall for 1812 and 1813, right, for radius accounting and authorization, AAA. And then right now what it's doing is it's going through and it's updating the system itself, right? So it's using DNF to go out and update all the RPMs that it needs to be able to build this out successfully. So while this is doing this, and this will just take a couple minutes, let's go to that Word document. So if you guys are interested in MAC Auth, the server management tool that comes with this deployment will allow you to add MAC Auth into the users file, and it will also allow you to do MAC Auth with iPSK excuse me, it will allow you to create entries for MAC Auth with iPSK also in the users file. But if you wanted to add, we'll say maybe 20 entries into the system, right? There's something that's also included in the Word document that will allow you to download a little Excel file, and you can open that Excel file and see that you can do kind of like an en masse deployment if you would like into FreeRADIUS itself. So under adding MAC-based entries, there's this embedded Excel file. If I open up that Excel file, you can see that there's one example in there right now. But what we do is we provide the formatting that the user's file is looking for, right? So again, you can use the server management tool that comes with the server, and you can do one by one, or if you had 20 that you wanted to add all at once, and you're comfortable with modifying that user's file, then you can use this Excel sheet to create the entries. So here you see we have a description, the original MAC address that was used, and then what we do is we just go ahead and strip out and create the format that the user's file is looking for. So just for one more example, right, I'll put in Spider-Man over here. And when I put in the MAC address for Spider-Man and give it a different IP or give it a different MAC address here, right, you'll see that we update the plain MAC entry for the user's file. We create just a descriptor, right, just a friendly description. And then the format for the user's file. If you are using MAC Auth with iPSK, then on the FreeRADIUS side, right, you need an indented tunnel password, and we'll show you that once the server gets deployed, where we have some examples in the user's file for that. So if you look at this, you'll see that this looks probably a little similar to the Meraki Dashboard, where you could actually go to the Meraki Dashboard and as I'm looking at my clients, I could line up these columns, and then I can download that as a CSV file, and I could copy that content, right? For example, my usernames that I wanted to use, the MAC address, so on and so forth, and just paste that into that MAC Auth file creation, right? And then you can import that or copy and paste that into the user's file for FreeRADIUS. So it looks like our server is updated and ready to go, and it wants to ask us a couple questions here. So we need to first provide the AD user that we created earlier for testing. And again, that's Radius user and the password, and then the group membership and the domain that we're going to be joining. And then for NTP, right, this we want to make sure that our clocks are in sync between FreeRADIUS and the Active Directory environment, right? So we want to make sure that we're pointing that over to a valid NTP source. And then the user account that we're going to use to join the computer to the domain. And then the subnet. And again, based on our diagram, right, we are going to be using 18.0. That's where our Meraki devices are from a management perspective. And the shared secret. Again, shared secret for the Meraki devices to talk to FreeRADIUS, right? Okay, and then here it allows us to review everything. So I'm going to take a look at this real quick. Yeah, that looks good to me. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. And then I'm going to join FreeRADIUS to my Active Directory domain. Okay, and then if you did look at the Samba AD deployment video, you'll see that a lot of this looks pretty similar, right? So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and sync up the time. This looks valid, looks good. And so now we're going to do some RPC calls. So the first thing we're going to do is make sure that we can talk to the Active Directory domain, and we can. Now we're doing a user list out, right, to make sure that FreeRADIUS can see the Active Directory users. We're going to do the exact same thing with the groups, just to make sure that that looks good, and it does. And then we're going to start working on some FreeRADIUS testing, right? So we're logging in as Radius user via winbind, and we can see that the password authentication succeeded, so that's good, right? Now what the server is going to do is it's going to create some default certificates that you can use for 60 days before they expire, right? So these are just internal testing certificates that come with FreeRADIUS, and it will just build out real quick here. In the server management, there's also another option. If you did want to create unique certificates, then you could do that. Here, we're actually testing MS-CHAP, and we can see that we're getting a good response of encryption allowed, so that's good. So the last thing that we are going to do is install server management real quick. Okay, and we are all done. So we are going to hit enter here, and the server is going to reboot. And then when I log back into the server, we'll be prompted with the server management screen, right? So again, server management has some tools in there for FreeRADIUS, but it also allows you to do some other management components. So like starting, stopping particular services, enabling services on boot, disabling services on boot, being able to add entries into the users file for FreeRADIUS, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll see what this looks like in a second. So looking at FreeRADIUS, we can go to the management section here, and we have the capability of, again, generating those certificates if we want to make them a little more unique to our environment for testing. You also have the capability of adding MAC address for auth, right? MAC auth with iPSK, being able to edit the user's file natively. You can also query the user's file. And again, the user's file is for all of your Mac-based authentication, right? Because otherwise, if it's 802.1x and we're providing an Active Directory username and password, right, we're sending that over to the Active Directory server. So the other things that we have in here is being able to run Radius in debug mode, right? So we can see every last entry that runs through the server if we need to troubleshoot something. And then the AD connector diagnostics, right? So what you saw very similar in the setup there where we took a look at the RPC calls, making sure we can see users and groups. That kind of goes through the same steps to make sure that you have good connectivity to the AD server or servers, right? And so, what we try to do is, from that perspective, break up the legs of authentication, right? Because if we have a failure from the Meraki AP perspective in the dashboard, which you'll see shortly here, if that fails for whatever reason, then we can look at the FreeRADIUS server's communications directly to the Active Directory server and make sure that that looks correct or it is successful. And so we can do that with the AD connector. We can also do that by just testing from the PEEP MS-CHAP option here too, right? So I can provide a username and their password, and we should be getting encryption allowed down here, right? So with that being said, let's go ahead and integrate our Meraki dashboard over to the FreeRADIUS server. So I'm going to go over to one of my wireless SSIDs here, and I'm going to go to Access Control on the Meraki side. And I'm going to grab this 802.1x test, right? So down here in my Radius server section, I'm going to add the IP address and my shared secret. That I used earlier, right? And I'm going to go ahead and click done here, click save. I'm going to come back down and I'm going to test for that user. And I'll go ahead and begin my test. So we see that we have 3 access points that were successfully authenticated. Excuse me, we have 3 access points that sent a request to FreeRADIUS for authentication for this particular user, and we had a good result, right? Now coming over here, if I want, let's take a look at the users file real quick, right? So in that users file, you'll see that we provide the formatting up here for MAC Auth and then MAC Auth with iPSK, right? And again, really the only difference between the two is this indented tunnel password entry that must be included, right? Down here, if you want to manually add entries, so if you want to do an NMAS using that Excel worksheet, then you can put them down here below this line. Inside of these 2 lines, right, inside of these hashes, this is where the server management will put its information. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's create a MAC address, and I'm just going to copy this guy as an example. So I'm going to put this, I want to put this MAC address into the FreeRADIUS server for authentication. And then I'm going to provide a description, and I'm just going to call it Matt's laptop. And at this point, for every entry that we put into the user's file, the FreeRADIUS service needs to be restarted to be able to reread that file for authentication, right? So I am going to restart the service. And now if I come down here to my user's file, you can see that we have a new entry, right, for a MAC authorization with Matt's laptop, right, as the description. If I want to do iPSK, then I just come down here. I'll do the exact same thing, using this as the example. Whoop. Do Matt's computer. And then the tunnel password. And now if we come down here and we look at the user's file, we'll see that we have this second option, right? Or excuse me, second entry, where we have a MAC address with the indented tunnel password and then the description for that entry, right? Now, as your user list grows, if you are going to use MAC authorization, as your user list grows, you then have the option for the server management to actually query the user's file. So you could look for a particular MAC address, description, anything within that. And then what this is really just a grep where we're bringing in particular lines above and beyond the entry query so that you can see what those entries are, right? So from that perspective, let's go back to our Meraki dashboard. And I'm going to go ahead and grab another SSID that I have here. And I am going to, oh, it looks like we already have this server in here. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this. Again, I'm using the same shared secret that I had earlier. And I'm going to run a test for the MAC address here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this MAC address. Come back over to my Meraki dashboard, plug this in. And you can see that we had 3 access points that were successful with the authentication for that MAC address. So that's pretty much it. We successfully built out a FreeRADIUS server. We got it integrated with Active Directory. We have put some entries into the MAC authorization, or excuse me, into the users file for MAC Auth. And we're up and running, right? We tested against the Meraki dashboard, and we're getting successful results. The one thing that I wanted to mention about FreeRADIUS, right, is that this is great if you want to use it in a testing environment. If you want to, maybe you want to use this at home, you can absolutely do that, right? Maybe you're a smaller shop and you don't have the needs for advanced things like user profiling, or maybe you're just getting your feet wet with 802.1x, right? You're trying to understand how that works. Maybe you have, just pre-shared key passwords right now in your environment. You want to harden things a little bit more above and beyond a shared PSK, right? This is a great entry for you to be able to do those types of things in your environment. The one thing that I will say though is that it's not a full replacement for, like, maybe you want to look at NAC services, or maybe you need to do some advanced things with host profiling, stuff like that. Obviously, you would want to look at a different platform, like maybe Identity Services Engine or something like that, right? That would allow you to be able to have that type of deployment in your environment. So definitely, I appreciate your time today. I hope you had fun. I hope you're excited, right? Maybe you can, turn this up in your environment, play around with it. But again, I definitely appreciate your time today. And thank you for your time. I know you're busy, and hopefully this will help you in being able to either understand more about Radius and how it works, or being able to, use this as a testing environment to make your life a little bit easier. So again, thank you, and definitely looking forward to hopefully seeing you in future videos.